All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, TCM community. This is your annual draft podcast recap for the 2033 amateur draft. It is me and Hokie. A couple people are listening in, a couple people might even chat. Who knows? We will kind of find out as we go. And as always, we're going to talk about the first 24 picks that would make up the first round of this year's draft. That maybe throw out a couple picks that we liked in the second round and beyond, if we liked any picks in the second round and beyond. Some of us most certainly traded our picks in the second round and beyond just because, you know, we didn't want to draft. So, um, or we were able to pick all the players we wanted early in the draft, which is kind of what actually happened. Um, but and away we go. Honestly, it is 9:40 now. We'll see what we could do with this draft. First overall pick this year was, in my mind, the obvious choice, and that was Jeremy Hernandez, 22-year-old right-handed pitcher going to the San Francisco Giants. And he's in AAA. So just why I wanted him, and I wanted him right away in my rotation, but instead he's just crushing it in AAA. I like the dude. I like the dude a lot. He was definitely number one on my board. I tried to trade up to draft him. Even did the right thing and told HH exactly who I wanted. Like I want Hernandez. That's who I'm looking at. He's like, that's who I'm looking at. I'm like, look at somebody else and give me Hernandez. But alas, to no avail. So I think he was the clear best player in the draft. He's just got a lot of things to like. None of the years seem to have home run problems, a good strike to walkout ratio. OBA is just barrel bottom low, and everything looks good. Two big pitches. The only thing that's a little bit weird is that he's not a ground ball pitcher, but his two pitches are ground ball pitcher pitches, which will change up in a curveball. He's got a decent fastball and an okay slider, but really he's got all those off speed pitches that scream ground ball pitcher, but he's not a ground ball pitcher build. So it'll be interesting. I think he's going to be very, very, very good. I think it's somebody that the Giants are going to have in their rotation for quite a long time. So, Hokie, what do you think?
I mean, honestly, I think he was the easy number one pick. I don't think anyone else was really uh, like someone that you had to actually have. Um, I think anyone else would have been like a positional pick versus best player available. And honestly, I think a lot of the times people make that mistake early on. The other thing that I really like is when you look at San Francisco, they have not had a pitcher. Uh, Other than Smoltz in like the last 5 or 10 years that have been better than 80 overall. So already they basically draft someone who could be ace on some teams or even second best pitcher, and it's going to lead them to a pretty good spot in the future. So I definitely think High Heat made a great selection here, and really any selection other than this one I would have questions about.
Yeah, and I think that's really what it is. I mean, it just seemed like there was a clear, this is the dude. And I could have made arguments for other players, and only based on like if the team that was taking them was not a team that might be in contention soon. Like if you're a team a little bit further off, I could see you taking a guy with a little bit more upside, maybe, or who's a little bit further off himself. But that would be just a weak argument at best. I mean, this guy clearly should have been picked where he was picked. So, moving on to the next pick, that was Clayton Oswalt, number two, going to the Twins. Again, another very good looking um, starting pitcher. I mean, this is another guy that seems to have a very straightforward build. Excuse me, good control and command. I don't think his power is going to be as high as I like to see it, but he should have pretty good movement too. I mean, he's going to be a very, very good pitcher. Um, but it was one of those guys that I saw him go number two, and I'm like, oh, thank God, because for whatever reason, he was, for as much as I do like Oswald, he was not a guy that I was targeting with my pick at five. So to see him go meant that there was more than likely a guy that I really liked falling down to me. So wasn't a bad pick; it was a good pick, but I thought there was better talent on the board still.
Yeah, I mean, from a pitcher perspective, I think he was really the other standout. I know you ended up with Kershaw, so like there were really for pitchers there were the big three. There was a big difference between one and then two and three, and then after that, there was quite a drop as well. So yeah, I mean, from a pitcher standpoint, um, they get a righty versus a lefty. I know some people kind of feel that to be a big thing. Um, but Minnesota right now is just trying to take, I think, their best player available, and kind of as you said, I think there were some other players that might be a better high-end option. Like, you look at who we're going to talk about in a second, being Albert Wagner or even Trout, who looks like he could be a five-tool player. Like, those are all players that I think could be potentially better than Oswald down the road, and that would be the only, I guess, knock on this pick. But once again, I mean, I don't think you can do anything wrong here. I think the build that Oswald has with the high control, command, his sidearm curve and change being his best pitches, he looks like he's going to be a pretty decent pitcher. But going on into the third pick with Albert Wagner, I mean, there's a guy with 73 contact, 80 94 speed, and very good range. And the fielding and arm will probably go up, and maybe his power is not ever going to be the greatest, but his gap power is pretty good. So he's going to steal a lot of bases for you, and yeah, like 98 steal frequency and 92 steal success. He's going to get you runs. So I definitely think Pittsburgh made a great pick with that third overall pick.
He was my two player on the board, honestly. For as much as I was kind of hoping he would slide to me, I really wasn't expecting it. So I scouted him with one of those. Oh, I really like him. That would be great. But I did not think. I honestly thought he might even go one overall. I really did like Albert Wagner. I just think that he is the real deal. I mean, he's going to be a really good shortstop. He's going to get on base quite a damn bit, and he should steal a bunch of bags. I mean, and you put that all together with a select field and shortstop. I mean, just all in, all in. I thought he was the second best player in the draft, potentially. And again, there's some other players that I think that could have the potential to be as good as him as well. But just especially in those premium positions, really liked Wagner. I thought it was a very prudent choice at three. Again, somebody that I would take in two easily, if not maybe even one. And that brings us to a guy you already mentioned, which is Beckham Aaron Trout. And again, so here's the one thing about Trout. He was a guy that as the draft was kind of unfurling, and obviously this is the pick right before me. I didn't want him. There was three guys that I was really um, you know, toying with, maybe even four guys that I was really toying with in my mind right before pick five hit. And Trout was not one of them. And now I'm not saying that he is not going to be a good player. I mean, clearly, when you look at him, you go, "Oh my God! Like this guy's going to be a six-tool player if that was such a thing." Like, just good God! Like he's got good speed, he's got good contact, he's got good power, he's got good eye. He's got a lot of good things. Um, I think the problem it was with me is that he seems to be good at he. So I don't know if I want to even say good. I want to say he looks to be average at everything right now. And that's not, I know that's not the right term because obviously he's not going to be an average player, more than likely. I mean, his defense looks good, but everything being at or around his overall contact, just above, power at, gap power at, eye at, like, there is a good chance that he might develop all of those. And Mogul 20 is a lot different than some of the other moguls that I'm more used to. But I just generally don't see all of those tools like go together and make somebody like a super tool. So something's got to give. What is that going to be? Is it going to be his eye? Is it going to be his power? Is it going to be something? I feel like it's got to give, and because of that, and being not sure what that is, it may be a little bit wary to pick him. Personally, again, everything looks really good on him. But personally, I just something there was a little bit wary. I didn't. I got a little scared to take him, so that's why I left him. I was going to leave him alone, even if he made it one more pick.
Think when you look at him, he basically is that 5 tool, 6 tool player. He literally does everything, I think, well. Like, I don't think he has a bad spot in his game. He's got like the good type of speed, although he may not be the quickest there. He's got the contact power, gap power. It really just kind of is going to be how he transitions. The biggest thing as well is he's also a switch hitter, which I would say is kind of a rarity to see, especially in the high end talent. Usually, your high end talent is like a lefty or a righty. But from a pure standpoint, like, you know, as I'm sure you'll talk about your next pick, which is yours, someone like Tyrus Cobb, like, there's a guy that probably steals 80, 90 stolen bases, potentially, depending on how the file kind of goes. But he's somebody that can steal a bunch of bases. And that might be more of, a high end center fielder than someone that does everything well.
And I think that I think you're absolutely right. And I think for me that was part of it too, because those are the two that are comparing because they seem to be the closest at the time. So yeah, moving into pick five with Cobb going to Boston. I mean, this was a guy that was you know top end of my scout board to begin with. I mean, he was I think third, after Hernandez and possibly Wagner. And again, I almost had Wagner and him kind of A B, kind of back and forth between them because I really like Cobb. He's clearly going to be um, a good center fielder. I mean, he's got all the range you could possibly need. Um, he's got a decent arm. He's got good fielding. Like all and again, fielding and arm can go up a little bit if those get in the 80s and that range gets in the 90s. Good God, I mean, he's going to be a Gold Glove caliber center fielder. His contact makes him feel like I could. I meant to, and I just didn't get around to it. So I'll probably wait. I meant to start him Sim 5. Like if I'd remembered to actually put in a team file, he would have been my starting center fielder Sim 5. Because I think that he could play now and do just fine, if not better. That speed, good lord, you're right. He's going to steal a ton of bases, and he's going to get on base a lot. His eye's a little bit below his overall, but his contact's so far above that even when the eye adjusts, it'll go up quite a bit. I mean, this dude's going to hit doubles and triples and just three or 400. Like I'll take that at Fenway Park any day. And even when you look at some of his amateur stats, like there's some years there where he hit some decent home run power. So he might be a guy that surprises you with 10 to 15 dingers a year on top of all the doubles and triples and stolen bases that he's going to give you. Like for me, especially as a lefty guy in a place like Fenway where lefties tend to hit really well, um, I was all in. Cobb was my guy.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at it, like, he's probably going to have the better range. In a place like Boston, he's going to do extremely well. Is he going to be, a better all-around player? No, but he fits your park, and like, we definitely talk about not drafting to need, but sometimes you draft to your park's ability or to the way that your team is built, and I'm always okay with that. I think when all is said and done, when you look at the finish of both players, um, Cobb is going to not look as pretty as Trout, but I think that from the standpoints that you want in your ballpark, I think he's great.
Yeah, and I think you bring it. So I don't draft on need. I think that is ludicrous. I've never done it. I never will do it. I think that's just a waste of a pick. But I will draft on fit, and I think that's the word I want to use here. I will draft on fit. I do the same thing in FCM. I will constantly draft left-handed power bats for Seattle because they fit very well in Seattle. I've gotten lefty power bats, not quite off the scrap heap, but off the second round discount pick style, and turn them into MVPs because that's the way my park is built. Same thing here. I will take guys that fit my park. Will Trout play just as well Fenway as he would anywhere else? Sure, absolutely. Cobb fits that park like a glove. He's going to hit and field and everything just so much better playing half his games there, and I'll take that any day. So,
Yeah.
um,
And the one thing I can say is, like, this is one of the few drafts where I think for the most part, Like we can all have different opinions on who goes in what order, but I can honestly say I think that these first five people, and including the next guy you took at spot six, they're all people that you could see in the top five or six. There is no surprise in this early part of the draft, which I think is a change for once.
No, the surprise comes a couple picks from now, I think, 'cause some of the surprises start to happen. But no, yeah, I think you're right. Absolutely not. Like, I don't think anybody would argue if they you said here are the top five they're going to be picked this year, and you give them the five that were picked, you're going to go, yeah, like there was no like, no, I really think this guy should probably take out this guy. Like, no, those. And again, you probably could make that argument for some of the dudes we're going to talk about, even Kershaw next. But honestly, like nobody would really fight you hard on any of those top five picks. But Charlie Kershaw was the next guy off the board. He went six to Boston. Boston traded a whole bunch to get him. And we're fine with that because we do not have pitchers in our system, really. Like, we have very few pitching system. And he's a really good pitcher. So, for as much as this could sound like, oh, you're drafting for need, I'm drafting a very good pitcher, which is a position that I'm not overly abundantly, I don't have a lot of. So, and I mean, Kershaw looks really good. I mean, this is a guy that's going to strike out a lot of guys. He's not going to give up a ton of home runs. He's going to keep the ball in the park. He's going to keep OBA down. Like, he's just going to be dominant. And again, Fenway is a place that lefty pitchers can pitch pretty well in at times. And is he Hernandez? No, he's not. But I mean, he was a guy I'd probably take over Oswald, or at least it would be close for. And again, I might be a little bit picky because I took Kershaw and I didn't get a chance to decide between him and Oswald. But if I'm looking at the two of them, yeah, I don't know. I'm probably taking Kershaw because he has more of that power arm. I want that power arm in my rotation, just mowing down people. So, really like Kershaw. Was thrilled that I could trade up and draft him, even though there was two other guys that I still really liked at this part of the draft. That did give me a little bit of pause on whether I want to take one of them instead. But in the end, I needed a pitcher. And so I went with a position that was a little bit weaker for me, over than another position that was not as weak. So
Yeah, and kind of like what I said, I think Hernandez easily the top pitcher in this draft, and then Oswald and Kershaw are probably your two and three. Like they there is obviously a step below Hernandez right now, and obviously endgame that may not be the case, but early on, big difference. But with that, there's also the big difference between either of those two and to potentially the next best pitcher, which could be a variety of people. There's a lot of different pitchers that were taken later that were obviously your fourth best pitcher, but they're also the same pitchers that you probably weren't going to take in the top five or six picks, or players. So, I mean, with this pick, Kershaw definitely a great pick. He's going to be a big power arm. He's a lefty. I know you and me both love that style of pitcher. So, there's definitely pieces that I like. I think that Kershaw has the chance to be the better pitcher, but on the flip side, if he doesn't hit, he also is going to be the pitcher that is a higher bust, whereas Oswalt is more guaranteed. So, and sorry, my dog is jumping on me as I'm talking. But yeah, Oswalt I think is the safer pick when all is said and done, but Kershaw has the chance to be the better pitcher.
I completely agree with that. I think that that makes a lot of sense. So, um, yeah, no, I definitely agree with that sentiment. I think he's more ready, but you're right. Kershaw has a little bit more swing, but has a little more. Yeah, we'll see. So, moving on to the next pick. This is Toronto. I know that Toronto had two men on their board, and when one of them went, he went with the other one, which was Jonathan Smith, the third baseman. This was not somebody that was on my board. And not necessarily because I don't think he's going to be a bad player, but I got the Bogs, so I really don't need a third baseman. And this is going to be one of those nice typical third baseman that's going to just be a power eye guy. Is he going to hit for a high average? Ignore the fact of what he's done in a minimal time in triple in Double A so far. He's probably not going to hit for the highest average, but he's going to pound the ball. Like he's going to hit doubles, he's going to hit home runs, and he's going to play some pretty darn good defense. Not a guy that was on my board, but I really like this pick by the Blue Jays.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the third basemen that have happened in the last couple drafts, you had, Brooks Robinson, you had Wade Boggs. Both of them were players that had very good D or very good contact. And Schmidt is kind of the opposite. He's never been, when you look, statistically, you're not going to think of him as being a big player with contact. He can field pretty well. He um, has the power and the eye. And I think that's kind of what you're looking for in him, which is going to be kind of a big thing. So it once again kind of goes into that type of build of, do you like your third baseman to be like that? I am somebody that would rather have, a Brooks Robinson, someone high contact, a lot of D. And I mean, I've never been great at drafting like those type of builds, but I think he still has a chance to be good. Uh, I just don't know how good he's going to be. The pick that I really like is that next one, only because he's the type of build that you're not used to, and as a second baseman, Andy Vogel, it stems from a very good great in FCM, which I think FCM people know about and other people don't. But yeah, what do you think on that?
He was the guy that I almost took at 5. He was the guy that I really almost took at 6. I really like Andy Vogel, a switch hitting power guy. People are going to overlook him, but this dude's going to field like a dream, and he's just going to mash home runs. Like again, is he going to have the highest average? No, probably not. He'll probably have a good average, not the highest average. But this dude should just when you go glove to second base and mash the ball. Almost, people for real life example almost want to think like a Jeff Kent, but with good D. Only because I can't remember if Jeff Kent had a good D or not. I want to say it was probably mediocre. But that's the kind of build you're getting here. You're getting a guy that's going to bash the ball more like probably a first baseman than a second baseman, but play a really good defense. Um, he was a guy I really thought about taking at 5, and then really, really thought about taking it at 6. And then just decided to stick with my gut on Gore at second base, and not take Vogel, but that might really bite me in the ass. Yeah, real big fan of his. So um, we will move on to the next pick, and that is a Percy really wanted Schmidt. Yeah, Schmidt. I think Schmidt's gonna be a good Percy. So we will move on to Washington next. Washington takes Nicholas Konerko, 19-year-old switch hitting first baseman of Paul Konerko vibes. This again, I really don't like drafting first baseman this high. I say that having drafted McGuire even higher just a couple of years ago, but not this first baseman. Um, he is a guy that looks like you're gonna fight. Is he gonna have a really good average? Is he gonna have really good power? Is he gonna kind of have a little bit of both? He's not gonna play defense really well, so he's definitely more DH type, which is fine. I'm not gonna DH guys, but I not sold on Konerko as much. Is he gonna hit? I think he's gonna hit quite well. But I just feel like there was other guys in this draft still that I liked quite a bit more than him. But again, I think he's one of those guys that probably goes out to Washington and probably plays really well, and you're thrilled to have. But he was not at the top of my board at this point. There was a couple guys that I really like still. There was a couple guys I was trying to trade up or back into to get still. Um, Konerko, not a big pick, a bad pick. If he's a guy that ends up being more like a 330, 20 to 25 home run hitter, I'm like, yeah, you're pretty happy about that. Not as happy for a guy that's 280 and 40 home runs, um, but pretty happy about that. And I think maybe that's kind of where his range ends up being. So, Hokie, what do you think about Canero? Konerko.
Yeah,
Whatever. I'm always right.
I definitely would agree. I think Konerko kind of has the build like Paul Konerko. Ironic that most of these players have that type of build. But yeah, I think it's going to work out. I mean, um, he is a switch hitter, which is going to be a little bit of a bonus for that. And he does hit better against righties. But I think he will have decent power because when you actually look a little bit closer, his power versus righties is above his contact. So I think as it goes up, he'll probably hit 30, 35 home runs maybe. But I think it will be closer to like him hitting 300 with 35 home runs and not necessarily like the 330 with like 20. But, we'll look at Percy's pick next, which is Sadaharu O. And everything that I see about O looks better than Konerko. So from like a first baseman standpoint, it's not that Konerko's bad. I just think this is the first opportunity where there is someone that's a better positional player that gets taken uh, after. And yeah, that's really the only thing I would say with Konerko is I just wonder if there's a little bit left on the plate. Now, Konerko looks like he can probably play a little bit better D right now than Sadaharu O, but O is going to just clamor the ball, like absolutely destroy it. And Cincinnati is going to love that type of player. And I mean, he's 17 with 84 power. Um, yeah. Now, I know Percy just said O is not playing in the field, and I will just reiterate once again there is a wonderful hidden uh, mechanism in this game that is called experience. And the reason that he has 50 experience is probably the fact that he was playing third base and whoever created him didn't change the experience at first base, so expect it to go up. Is he ever going to be a Hall of Fame? Sorry, is he ever going to be a Gold Glove first baseman? Probably not, but I don't think he's going to be as bad as what he looks.
Yeah, I'm gonna call him Sandra O. Just because that's what I want to do. But I like O better than Canerco by quite a bit. Again, when I'm drafting for things that I think are gonna fit better, um, while I do like Canerco's switch hitting ability, don't get me wrong, a left-handed power bat I'm all in. I'm always all in on a left-handed power bat. The fact that his contact's above his overall, his power is above his overall by quite a bit. His eye is right at his overall. I mean, those are all things that I really like to see in my first baseman. And yeah, Konerko was well above on all those things. Little something about that eye being that far above everything else that can be a worrisome thing for some people. But I would have gone O. I just think O is going to be that power slugger that I want to have in my lineup somewhere. Again, not that I think Canerco is going to be bad. I just O fits my need better, generally speaking. So I was a big fan of O. Next up, we have the Tigers taking Jackson Lee. Um, who again, when you're looking at, we've talked extensively about pitchers in this draft. Who is that? That next tier is Lee in the next tier. Is Morelia in the next tier? Is it Rivera? Is it Marino? Is it Peavy? Is it Beckett? Like, there's a lot of guys. Who is the top of that next tier really? Is it Michael Vick Jr.? Here's a hint: it's probably not Michael Vick Jr. But I like Jackson Lee. I mean, this is a guy that even though he doesn't have that power that I prefer to see, good movement, good control, good commands, got a good fastball, good cutter, really good changeup. Like, he should be a pretty darn good pitcher when it's all said and done. The one thing that's a little bit of a detriment to him is the fact that he's already 22. He's already 22, and his birthday he'll be 23 next offseason. So he is older, which, might or may not mean anything. It really depends on mobile, but sometimes those older guys don't have as much room to grow. Makes them a little bit less desirable for some people. Jackson Lee's looks good. Not a guy necessarily I would have taken just because I'd be a little bit worried about that advanced age. even for as good as he looks overall.
Yeah, I mean, I think he has that kind of step where he could very well be, uh, you know, very good. I think the age is kind of the thing that can be scary. I mean, whether or not he actually hits the peak that he is, but I think the way that his stats are kind of set up with the fact that everything is already fairly high above at 74 overall. Even if he, say, does kind of miss the boat and hits 85 or 86, you're getting a pretty good pitcher. It's just like you look at his numbers, and he's not going to be your big strikeout player, but he's already pitching a 1.93 ERA and A. And sometimes those type of players kind of backfire there. But I mean, really, the big thing is at no point is there another pitcher, I think, really at his level. And once again, I do think that Kershaw and Oswalt will be better than Lee, just based on the fact that they're younger and how their builds are designed. But Lee is like, I think, no doubt, the fourth best pitcher in this draft. And when that is really the big thing, I think, hey, Detroit, they kind of hit on a pitcher at least. Maybe he doesn't become, a Cy Young winner, but he's going to be a very capable ace. And once again, you go back to it, and the thing is, you can't grade a team on how well they've drafted when players are taken before they actually have a pick. Like, you can't say Jackson Lee is a bad pick because Jeremy Hernandez was in the draft, because obviously it's 10 picks before when he gets taken. When you can say someone makes a bad decision is when there's that player left. And I think if Detroit was going with a pitcher, he nailed it. I think Jackson Lee is still going to be a very good player.
I agree. I think that he has a higher floor, but there is a pitcher still on the board that I like better, that goes in the first round. So, um, you know, everybody think about who that might be before we actually get to that pick. Dun dun dun. Anyway, moving on to the next pick, Jaden Feeler, just another big time lefty power bat. Good eye, low contact, high power, just like Prince Fielder. I mean, this is a dude that should hit a lot of home runs. But at the same time, I mean, if you look at his stats in college and high school, good God, he just crushed the ball. But he is not a guy that I don't think I would have taken this early, named or not, just because he is about to, hasn't hit it yet, about to hit his birthday, so he's about to turn 22. So a dude with the contact that low, about to hit 22, no. I'm staying away from him. Not that he might not just, have a small drop, get it back right away. Like, I'm not chancing it. Not this high in the draft. I'm not chancing taking this guy, based on the fact that, there's still some players that I like better than him out there. And the fact that he's about to turn 22 with a low contact, like, yes, there is a place for the guys that hit 220 and 40 home runs. But this high in the draft, I feel like you could find better guys than that. And again, there's a couple guys we're going to talk about here shortly that I think would have been better options. Is he going to blow up and be terrible? No, I'm not saying that. I mean, I think most of these guys are pretty safe bets, for the most part, but just not a guy that I'd be taking at this point. And my thing on Jackson Lee, just real quick too, before we move through that, is that he is a guy that, based on his age, based on his build, I feel safer taking him at the back end of the first. I think taking him in the top end of the first is a little bit more, um, high risk, high reward. Where you're taking him in the back end, it's a little bit of a lower risk with the same high reward. So, and again, if you really like the dude, you take him where he's at. You don't say, I could trade back and still get him. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. I've taken these type of players tons of times, over in FCM and other leagues, usually later, just because, some people overlook them. So again, Doki thinks that he was the fourth best pitcher in the draft, so maybe he's going right. But that was the feel that I got out of him. What do you think about Fielder, though?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Obviously, Prince Fielder was an absolute stud. His father, Cecil, was a pretty good player as well. And maybe you're just kind of hoping the name kind of brings the same thing. But like you said, the contact being so low, he's going to smash the ball. So I don't think that's going to be a problem. I am definitely someone that I don't genuinely like to take first baseman uh, early in the draft. This is the third first baseman that's taken in the draft, and I do think that there may have been a few better options later in the draft uh, on that team. Now, um, and even when I look at the Mets themselves, they have already a DH and Piazza potentially down the road if their one catcher ever gets better. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I do think there were better options.
I think the next player could have potentially been that better option, one of those better options, though I wasn't as high on him, I think, as some others were. And that is Joshua Pierre, 21-year-old right hitting center fielder. This is a dude with that true speed. I mean, just speed, 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 speed. I mean, Speedy Gonzalez. Honestly, this dude has tons of speed. He's got good range. He's going to be a pure center fielder, and he should hit pretty well, decent eye. Solid contact. I think the contact is the one thing that I'm a little bit worried about. Um, but all in all, really, really like Josh Pierre. Not as much as the next guy we're going to talk about, who was a guy that I was horribly trying to trade up to get and failing miserably to do so. But I think Josh Pierre is potentially a better guy than the last gentleman we just talked about.
Yeah, I mean, Joshua Pierre is basically that number one or number nine hitter. And, if once again, when you start to get into this area, I feel like the back half of the first, sometimes you kind of pick what is going to kind of build your team. Like, some people, especially when a lot of the pitchers start to look the same and maybe you're not as confident in taking a pitcher. Um, you take someone that kind of has that build. I mean, you look at Joshua Pierre and you kind of see that that build is not likely to fail. Like, he's got 94 speed. It's the good speed. He's got good fielding. His contact's above. Uh, I don't think there's anything wrong with his type of build. He will get on base and he will score you runs, and I think it's very valuable. And I think at the end of the day, it's probably not going to, like, Pierre's going to go two or three picks later, anyways. Like, uh, I think at this position, he probably would have been a better pick the pick before by the Mets instead of Fielder for that purpose. Um, but I personally like the pick by Joshua Pierre. I am going to kind of ask Dave. I mean, should Kevin Edmonds be a little scared that you're trying to replace him with Juan Pierre's son? I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to start anything because Edmonds is Dave's favorite player, but that could start a controversy. But going forward with that, ironically enough, there is another center fielder that gets taken a little bit later that just had a massive jump in the last sim, and that kind of makes it seem like maybe Pierre's not going to be quite as good as him, but who knows? But John Henry Williams, who I can't believe you passed up, and shame on you. Uh, like, I understand he doesn't have the speed, but he's got everything else. And I know he's 22 and a right-handed pitcher, but he's not going to war. Unfortunately, in this game, he is going to be probably someone that hits like 350, 360. He has a lot of power, and he has a good eye and gap power. Like, he is just going to be a stud. Uh, and it's unfortunate for MZ that he's not going to war because, this is a guy that might end up hurting him in the long run. Kansas City's kind of built a nice team. They have Barry Bonds, they have Williams, they got Johnson, and Emsey's trying to build this super team, and all of a sudden, one of the teams you might have to go through is Kansas City. Wouldn't it just be great if John Henry Williams knocked out Boston in the playoffs?
So he was in my contention at 6 when I traded back up. I tried to trade all my picks next year to move back up into the draft to take him, even though I don't really have a spot for him because I do. I liked him a bit. He is a bit old. I'm a little bit worried about some of that power. But again, his amateur numbers say he's going to have the power. I'm not sure if the vitals quite say that, but I mean, I'm not always, well, we'll see. Good fielder, really good bat. No, I mean, I really like this guy. I think this is better than a lot of those picks we've talked about in the last 5, 6 picks. He was a guy, again, I was desperately trying to trade back into to take just because why not? But I hold firm that I think Cobb is going to be a as good, if not better, player. So I wasn't overly worried about it. Um, and on top of that, again, I have a pretty good center fielder in Slike already. So um, I wasn't. I never drafted on Indeed. If I thought he was the best player, I would have taken him as such. But I got guys that I thought were as good or better. So as far as he goes, yeah, I mean, I will absolutely message Incognito as soon as I can and try to pry him away. But I'm not expecting much luck on that. So it is what it is. Williams, a good player, very good player, could be an all-time great. It'd be exciting to watch him play, even if it is in Kansas City and not in Boston, where maybe he belongs. So moving on to the next pick, which was Manny Baradia. Um, this is one of those picks where I shook my head a little bit. I wasn't too sure about. So this is a 17-year-old left-handed pitcher, a command pitcher with poor control, pretty good power and good movements. Got a good fastball, solid slider and curve. I just wasn't excited about Meridia. For a guy that could be a power pitcher, is K to walk's not that good. Home runs are fine. Most things are fine, but I don't know. He was just not somebody that was on my list whatsoever. Even initially when I had pick at 24 and some earlier picks like that, he was not a guy that I was targeting.
Yeah, I'll be honest. This is probably one of the first picks that I have to kind of question fully why he went there. Like even as much as maybe we talked about Canerco over uh, the other first baseman Sadaharu O, or the fact like that Fielder got drafted in the position that he did. This is the one that is more or less a little bit of a head scratcher because I just don't see a whole lot of things in him that really make me want to be like, oh, I actually want him on my team. Um, so that's kind of where I sit on Moreta. Um, like he's got low control. He's got high command, which is great, but uh, I don't know. He also honestly, you guys have posted a bunch about this, and it is definitely a thing. A lot of the regularly created players may not be uh, or have a less or a lower percentage of actually ending up making its way to like a good player. But guess what? He is not a creative player. So if you fall in the belief that I only make stud players, there's Marino who gets taken next. And ironically enough, it's the Angels that took Marino instead of, as well. And that's a better pitcher. You know, it's just he's not the pitcher that I would take. There are a lot of pitchers that I would take beforehand, and um, yeah, that's just kind of how I see it. Now, maybe we all get fooled, and maybe Marita uh, ends up being a stud, and I don't know because in a normal, like if you were to normally look at control and command and like Mogul 2014 being the same, um, then I kind of like that build because uh, it's there, but that control, like for me, for him to be a really good pitcher, when all is said and done, his control's probably going to end up around 60, 65. But the command, power, and movement all have to be in the 90s. And that's what I think he has to become, and I don't know if he can.
He's a guy that if I had gotten in the second round, I feel comfortable about it, hoping for the best, but not too worried if he flames out. He's a guy, if I'm picking the first round, I'm only taking him because I'm going to convert him to a relief pitcher, and I think that's where he's best done. So, yeah, not a fan. Sorry, LA. Just it's a no for me, dog. Michael Marino is up next, and you're right. I think this is a guy that I can get behind a little bit better. We're still not at the pitcher that I like best yet after the big three. But I do like Michael Marino a little bit more. You know, this guy's got the good power, good control, good command, good movements. You know, I like his repertoire. Outshoot, second pitch, got a good fastball, got a good changeup, got a good gyro ball. Like a lot to like here. Almost a Daisuke Matsuzaka kind of pitchers look by look of it, just by first glance. Um, and I kind of dig it. Yeah, the 1 year was his home runs were a little bit high. I don't think that's necessarily going to be an issue. Strikeout to walk ratio for the most part's pretty good. Like, yeah, this is a guy that I'm much more willing to take a chance on in the first round, even if I'm not 100% sold that he's a first round pick. He's a guy I'm much more willing to take that shot on. He's a guy that's already passed his birthday, so we've seen the fall, and now we maybe get to see the rise. Like, you know, I'm much more comfortable with him than the last guy. So
Yeah, like I said, it's interestingly enough, I feel like we each are going to like the same pitcher uh, the most that was remaining. And maybe I'm wrong, but like this is a stretch of one, two, three, four, five, six, seven pitchers, and you know I would argue that both of these pitchers that were taken, as much as I do like Marino more than the last one, there's two pitchers I still like above Marino. So this is that area where sometimes teams kind of make or break, but at least I do think Marino has a chance to be a good pitcher because his power is very high for being 58 overall. Um, so I do think he has the potential to be a pretty good player. I just don't know if he's the best pitcher that's taken in this section of seven.
he's not. He's better than the last one, but he's definitely not the best. I think the best one we talked about in a couple here, which is not the next one. So I apologize to High Heat, but Gaspar Rivera is not that pitcher that I'm been mentioning on and off. I like him just fine. Big power arm, good movement, good control. Command's going to lag a little bit behind. It's got that fastball splitter combo that I like to see with a decent sinking fastball. I say all that, then he has the high ground ball rate, 60%. Like these guys just confuse the absolute hell out of me. He looks like my typical power arm that I want, and then just like, nope, ground ball pitcher. And I say, that doesn't make any sense. Home runs are on the cusp of being high. Strikeout to walkout is also on the cusp of being a little bit low. So it's rough. I really want to like him, and then there's those things right there: the walk ratio, the home runs, the high ground ball rate. Is he a power pitcher? Is he not a power pitcher? I mean, all signs point to him not being a power pitcher, which makes me like him a little bit less. Were he for sure a power pitcher? I'd like him quite a bit, but I don't think that he is. I also see that he said a closer, so I don't know if that was fixed or a mistake or one of those, you know, mogul things. But if you listen to this, I would definitely like take a look at that because I don't know if you want him as your closer. If that's what you want him as, you know, honestly, I start to like him again. But as a starter, lukewarm. I'm lukewarm on him.
Yeah, I definitely think Rivera is going to be a very good uh, a very good pitcher. Once again, he's going to give up a ton of home runs. He had a pretty decent jump in the sim, so it looks like he was drafted at
Is that what I'm looking at? Am I looking at a jumped guy?
yeah, he was 84 peak when he was drafted.
Okay.
Uh, now he's 89. But once again, I think if he's the closer, he's a good player. It's just I think it's interesting that he's got all that power and he's got 60% ground balls. It's kind of a weird thing going on there.
It's
But
I don't I, that's what I worry about. I don't like that. That just seems like a glitch almost.
yeah, but I think at the end of the day, um, it's the next pitcher, and if this is the person that you also like more, he did jump, so he was
Ah,
64 overall with 86 peak, and he jumped to 75 91. But yeah, he is the player that we can all talk about Jake Peavy and how he was supposed to be one of the great pitchers, and then uh, was just unfortunately injured and his career like fizzled so quickly. Like I actually was surprised. I think PV retired at like 28. Like he didn't even make it to 30, and he almost won or he did win a Cy Young. I can't remember now, but
yeah, careful.
PV is the type of player that just looks everything looks nice. I mean, his power is a little low, but I'll take that when you look at how many pitches he has. That his control and command are good. Like, there's a lot of things to love with him, and I definitely think he was the best player. And it just worked out that Jason finally got a jump. For a team that I actually argue normally doesn't get jumps, it's kind of nice to see he actually got a jump on a player.
Yeah, here's the guy that I had in my fourth best pitcher. Mind you, I for once I messed up, and I'm looking at our current file and not our draft day file like I normally do. But he was definitely the guy I had. As like, oh, after the main three, this is the guy I would have wanted. And again, even before that jump, I just there was something about him that I like, and I think the jump just kind of confirms that or confirmed that. But I think PV ends up being the fourth best pitcher out of this draft. I think there's some other good guys there, but there's just something about this build, just the way that this kind of flows that I think turns out to be, quite good. So, yeah, big fan of PV. Wyatt Beckett goes 19 overall. Wyatt Beckett, based off Josh Beckett, is another interesting pitcher. I mean, again, this guy's a little bit younger-ish, 21, going to be 22. So you do worry a little bit, what's that jump going to look like? Does he get a jump between now and his birthday? If he does, you probably like him a lot more than maybe you do now. He's got that high ground ball rate, good sinker, good change, solid fastball, good cutter. Love to see that with your ground ball pitchers. Good control, good command, good power, which is a little bit weird. And then movement right at, and the movement should start to skyrocket. So, I mean, I like Beckett. If I'm looking for a pitcher in the back end of the first, this is the guy that I want. This is the guy that I'm looking for. Yes, I like PV, probably the fourth best pitcher, but if I'm looking for that pitcher that I think is going to make it to me in the late teens, early 20s, Beckett is the guy that I want. Good strikeout to walk ratio, home runs, just high enough that people are going to be scared, but not too high that I'm scared. Um, which is a fine line. Don't get me wrong. But I like Wyatt Beckett.
Yeah, I mean, I think the jump for PV kind of makes Beckett look a little bit better. But yeah, I think that Beckett was a great pick here, and ironically enough, for Washington, it was better than their first pick. So he was the guy that I thought was like a number two in comparison, potentially with the capability to be better than PV. But there were a lot of things I did like about PV a little bit more than Beckett. Um, but I think those were the 1-2 in this set of seven. And I think all seven have a chance to be pretty decent, but I think these are the two standouts. Once again, my big concern is, and kind of like you said, if he doesn't have a great jump, he's 21. If he hits 22, he could be like 84 peak or something like that. And that's the thing where the upside can definitely be a little bit more of a gamble.
It'll be interesting to watch. It really will. I think this would be a good mid part to look back at a couple years and see who hit, who didn't. 'Cause I think it'll be a lot of fun to talk about that, to see kind of how it went. So, um, moving on to the next pick, that is relief pitcher Michael Dog Killer Vick Jr., 19-year-old closer. Um, uh, Out of all the relief pitchers in the draft, I was definitely looking at this guy with my 24th pick as I had it at one point. He's got a good two pitches, which is good for a reliever, good fastball, good slider, uh, decent, good control, solid command, good power, good movement. Like I would have been all over this guy in the back end of the first. I think this is definitely a guy that you grab, expecting him to be potentially a dominant closer. So maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm full of shit. It's always possible. However, this is the dude I'd be taking.
Yeah, I mean, and like with being the fifth last pick in this round, definitely a great pick here, and I think he's going to be the best closing pitcher or relief pitcher in this draft.
Yep. So you heard it. Commissioner said I was right. We will move on to the next pick, which is Jaime Garcia, 21st overall to the Yankees. And I just love watching the Yankees make terrible picks. I mean, it just makes me all warm and fuzzy inside because I hate the Yankees. Um, but I don't hate Cheetos. So it's a very tough thing to do because I don't hate the GM. I just hate the team. So it is what it is. But no, I actually don't hate Jaime Garcia. I mean, this is a guy that has solid control, solid command, good power, solid movement, and two good pitches. Um, I don't know. I don't like him better than some of those guys we've already talked about. But I think this is a solid pick at this end. I mean, especially when you look at those stats that he had in high school. Good Lord, those are amazing stats. Yes, the walks are horrible compared to the strikeouts a couple of those years. But all in all, I mean, those just look like dominant stats. Um, why he's still pitching in high school at 20 years old might make me think that he's a little bit dumb. So that could be an issue. And clearly he had a birthday. I'm curious at the drop because I can't see it and what it was. So hopefully for Cheeto's sake, it was small. But Jaime Garcia, not a bad pick, I think, in the back end of this first. Again, I don't know what he actually looked like on draft day because clearly he had a drop since then. But even as he sits now, looks to be a solid pitcher. And I hope he's taking the dog out. So I'm going to move on to the next pick, which is the Oakland. We've got all your money's athletics. Taking Russ Falala, la 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 la, 19-year-old center fielder who's a switch hitter. This is another one of those guys that when I was eyeing up the back end of the first, he was on my list. I mean, this is a guy with pretty good speed. Not as good a speed as you've seen up at the top, but still pretty good speed, which, if anything, is going to really help his defense out in center field. A guy with good contact, good gap power, good eye. It's just one of those all around good players. Is he going to hit home runs? Probably not. But he's one of those low key guys that'll probably hit 300, um, you know, 20 to 30 doubles, maybe 10 to 15 dingers. And get on base quite a bit and steal a few bags, a surprising amount of few bags. So I think this is definitely a guy that eventually people go back and go, oh man, maybe that would have been a better choice. So um, I like the pick, especially at this part of the draft where things start to thin out a little bit. Not a bad pick. Tampa Bay picks 23rd. Tampa Bay takes Rust Maynard, switch hitting shortstop. Because he's a switch hitting shortstop. Why not? This is a guy that is 19. He's got contact, power, gap power, eye. Everything's above his overall. His speed's not true speed, which I think is my big issue. It's definitely he's going to steal some bases, but not a lot. And his defense is abysmal, abysmal. Yeah, I mean, he's a 66 rated shortstop, like just woof. Fielding's not too good, arm's not great, range is pretty good, and will be helped by the speed. Um, so you really hope the bat comes around, and he's going to hit a lot of doubles with that gap power. And he has pretty good eyes. I mean, he's going to see the ball well. He's going to get on base quite a bit. But I really just worry about how good he's actually going to be. I'm thinking, you know, fringe starter on most teams, unless you're a rebuilder, in which case you're all over him. Like I'm not super high in Maynard. Um, and that brings us to the last pick of the first round. The White Sox take Mark Heinroskis, a relief pitcher, who again, oh man, is one of those guys you want to love. Got really big power. Should have good movement, good command, poor control. Um, and I think in a relief pitcher, you're not as worried about that poor control in relief pitchers as you would be maybe in a starter. And his stats were quite good in high school, his amateur numbers. So a little bit higher than him. I still think Vic was the better relief pitcher. But I think Mark should be a pretty solid closer moving forward. There was a few guys here as we finish up the first round or have finished up the first round that I was surprised didn't go a little bit easier. And one of those guys, I think, for me, again, these are guys I was looking at potentially taking in that back half of the first round. And that one of them is Colin Kaepernick, the right fielder. Yes, he's already 22. We've talked about that quite a bit, but I mean, he just turned 22 in May. Tremendous outfield glove. And I'm really interested to see how that comes along because he's got some really good speed. I mean, like true steel speed. And the bat, if that gap power stays up and he hits those doubles, he gets on base, his contact stays average, like he could be a low key, pretty darn good starter. So I like Kaepernick going to St. Louis there in the middle of the second. And there was another guy I'm trying to find real quick. That I thought was an interesting pick that ended up going a little bit later, and I'm not seeing him off the top of my head. Uh, Volk, did you ever come back? He has not. So, another one that I'm interested to see how he turns out is Eric Turner, who went right first pick of the second round there to the Pirates. He's got big contact, big gap power. Um, and just a subpar eye. But I'm really interested to see how those two as the only two stay, especially as a left-handed hitter. Interested to see how he plays out. So um, there was another guy that I swear was a race car driver that I thought I'd like to. I don't know if I'm going to find him that quick. Was there a wall trip? I swear there was a wall trip.
Yeah, there was a wall trip. I think he went in the second round.
Oh, you're back. Was he after the race car driver?
He was just a random guy.
Oh well, I thought I
Yeah.
liked him. I'm trying to find him. I swear I kind of liked him.
Washington, second
There he
round,
is.
sixth overall, in that second round. So I mean, pretty decent speed and other ratings.
Yeah. Decent. It does what decent contact, good gap power, solid eye, a little bit of speed. 17-year-old left-handed hitter. I thought there was some things to like there.
Yeah. So I'll just quickly go through. I know you kind of went through the last four picks, and I heard everything. So, Jamie Garcia, is being switched to a starter. I think he's going to be a pretty decent starter. I definitely like the pick. It should be interesting to kind of see what type of build he does end up having. But overall, I actually kind of like the pick for Cheeto. Ross Falardu, also looks pretty decent. I thought he jumped, but maybe not. I don't know. 5685. 5685. So no, he definitely did not. Maybe it was a different player that jumped. I don't know who it was. Anyways, doesn't really matter. Then like with him, he once again he's kind of like Waltrip, except a little bit of a better fielder and a switch hitter. I'm sure he's just going to become an absolute stud in Oakland. For Mark Maynard, I think not a bad pick at the end of the round. You're just kind of hoping he becomes like a decent fielder. I think Maynard will be better as a second baseman than the shortstop that he is. Um, but I don't. I would definitely classify the middle infielding of this draft was not very strong. If anything, I would actually say most of the infield was not super strong. There was a lot more pitching heavy uh, players. So I think when all is said and done, a lot of these pitchers are going to end up in rotations because normally, or bullpen, like they'll be usable players. And then finally, Mark, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name. Looks like he's getting turned into a starter. I think he would have been an absolute beast as a closer. But yeah, I think maybe Nate didn't realize that he's in as a starter. I don't think it's intentional because the strategy for pitch count was changed. But I think no matter what route he goes, he's going to be a phenomenal pitcher. I actually really like this. It's just whether or not he hits his peak. I think really that is kind of the end thing. And I know it's kind of a cheesy way out, but yeah, I think that's the case. Now, Jake Palathorpe is the guy that I must have been thinking about. For some reason, I thought he was a fielder. Oh, you know what? It was Ivan Sabiran, who is already on his team as an outfielder. That's who it was. I knew there was someone on Oakland that got a pretty good jump, but yeah, Palathorpe, 90 peak, drafted in the third round, third overall. So really Oakland second, 70 contacts, 72 commands, 73 movement. He looks to be a pretty decent player based on the position that he was drafted. And I don't think Oakland needs more help. So, come on, game. Let's make it a little more challenging here. So that was one of the guys. There was someone else, but while I take a look for him, I will let you say because I feel like you got another name that you were thinking about.
No. I mean, yes, there was another name. It was Bob. Bob Baran. No, I didn't have another name. There was a couple of guys I liked. I think I mentioned them all. I don't think there was
Oh,
anybody.
Joe Peterson, uh, also taken in the third round. Looks like the third round picks actually ended up being pretty decent. So he's a left-handed pitcher with 83 power, 64 movement, 73 control. He's going to give up bombs in Texas, so I don't know how good he's going to be in Texas. But he had a nice little jump. He was 54-82 and is now 64-90. So pretty big movement there for him. Um, and you know what? He has a lot of the pieces that are pretty decent.
All right, so I think everybody missed up by not taking Captain America, but that could just be me. I did like Cecil Page, taken way back by the Rays in the fifth round. I think that dude's got legit upside. So um, I should probably just trade for him now so he can suck. But that was the one dude I was trying to think of. I knew there was somebody later in the draft that I kind of really liked. It was Cecil Page.
Well, there you go. No relation to Satchel.
I didn't think that it was based on the fact that he went in the fifth round, but who cares? Anyway, any final thoughts? Anything you think that we should talk about for the good of the order, or
Yeah.
should we just go to sleep?
I'll definitely let you go to sleep. One thing I would say is this year was the longest draft ever. It did not finish until midnight. We only had like 5 or 6 pre-draft picks up until like 8 o'clock. So my ask really is just send a list. If you know, like, I'll be honest, I'm the first person here with running this league and then also a hockey league. I don't respond to text messages at work. Um, or not very often am I on Discord when I'm at work. And I like check and I have like 50 notifications and a whole bunch of emails and things like that. So like there are times that I check quickly. Um, but like if we could just do that, that would be great. Because like it would just allow where maybe we can get 2 or 3 picks going. Uh, it was pretty atrocious. I don't even care. Like in the middle of the draft, I know like Byron Alonso, he disconnected, so and was trying to trade down, and none of that actually bothers me. If people want to take a little bit longer to trade a pick, that's fine. But if we got like it took us an entire hour to do the first round, and it was 11 p.m. when we were in the fourth round. Like that just was an extremely long length of time, and I don't really want to get to the point where I have to like skip picks. But that might be something that I do because I'll be honest, it was a little atrocious to do it that long. You know, a 2.5 hour draft is one thing, but like we were going on to like 3.5, and it was really bad. So that would be my ask. And the whole reason it started to go fast is everyone traded out. No one wanted their picks, so they just traded it to the Pirates and another team. um, so yeah, as far as the annual bashing of staying picks, he only had one pick. I can't really bash the pick because in the fourth round you're just kind of throwing a dart. But yeah, I guess that's the way for staying to get out of that. And finally, I think one of the things we will be, I know that you and I are going to be talking about, um, is I know there are a lot of people had questions about IFA. It will get released earlier. I will try to release players at free agency to make it a little bit better. So that will make it a little bit easier. I know that this time was I don't think it necessarily was rushed, but I think there were a few small loopholes happened. I do owe teams their money back. I totally forgot to do that. The Dodgers keep saying that uh, he should have been under cap because of that. Um, Realistically, yeah, teams are going to get some extra money back. So there you go. But yeah, we're going to definitely have more selection. I'm going to try to do 15 to 20 people, if possible. Some lower prospects, kind of see what ends up happening. And kind of go from there. Because of that, maybe that means next year we take a little bit less created players in the rotation of the draft. If there are some lower level players that people would like to see starting to be created, I have like multiple lists, but like we've now made so many posts in Discord that I don't know where that list is. So if you have some like favorite players that maybe weren't great, I don't mind even making them an IFA. Uh, you know, like there's some definite options there. Like yeah. So that's really all I kind of wanted to say on that matter. But the
But
biggest thing
Nixon.
is just let's not make the draft so long.
Otherwise, they'll try to do what I'm trying to do in my league, which is the same what OSML does. So giraffe starts at spring training.
Oh yeah, no, I hate that. That's never happening.
Oh, I think if people buy in, it actually works out great. At least in these older leagues, because like honestly, the players don't change that much between spring training and draft time. But good lord, I put that in for the first year, and everybody's just like, "What's this?" But since it's a 16 team league, I'm like, you know what? Uh, Fuck it, I'll just draft normal the first year. It'll be fine, and it was fine. But this year we are moving into the way that I have the league set up, which is I don't want to I don't want to have one of those 6 hour drafts. But come here. My dog came out a little while ago and sat by me. Now he's leaving. I don't want him to leave yet, so I could take him out one more time. So maybe I should just end this so we can do that. But nope. All right, everybody, from all of us to all of you, as you got to hear me yell at my dog, which is fine because Hokey got up in the middle to take care of his dog too. So we hope you enjoyed your draft as much as we didn't. And remember, if we bash your picks, pick better. That's just really what it comes down to. Pick better, and we won't have to. So have a good night, everybody. We will talk to you again soon. Bye.
Post the thing for Craig, and then I'll copy and paste.
You have to end it because you started, Craig.
Yeah, I don't know the command.
It's leave. It's just the same thing, but leave.